Good morning. Oof, friends. Last night I woke up in the middle of the night and I read the new memoir by Virginia Roberts Joffrey. It is called Nobody's Girl. And it is, I got to tell you, a hard read. And I don't intend to revisit in detail the specifics of her suffering, of the torment. I want to tell you that I will be absolutely furious if Donald Trump decides to pardon Ghislaine Maxwell. Completely unacceptable. And what I want to share with you is that, how do I put this? Her life was worse than you can imagine. There are things in this book about her childhood that we simply did not know. And what I will say, and I took some screenshots on my phone because I was reading it on my Kindle. What I want to say, most importantly, is that Virginia Joffrey was victimized when she was a child. She was abused as a small girl, 6 or 7 years old, and up really much throughout her childhood. And previously, she's spoken about this, saying that she had been assaulted by a family member. But it is in this book where she writes that the family member who first subjected her, who mainly subjected her to sexual assault, was her own father. And unfortunately, she's not the only one. It's utterly tragic to be put in a situation where an adult upon whom you depend for your life, for your emotional health, for your physical health, betrays you in that way. So that hit me pretty hard to know that. Also, previously, I think you may have known that she had been, prior to her father bringing her to Mar-a-Lago to work for Donald Trump when she was 16, and that was in like 2000, or nearly 16. I don't remember the exact dates. I think it was 16 because it was in the summer, that she had been a runaway. And I kind of knew this from reading the work of Julie K. Brown and other writings. But what I didn't fully appreciate was her story. When you hear the word runaway, you don't fully know everything. And of course, it makes complete sense that a girl who was being sexually assaulted by her father would be in a situation where she would want to run away. Now, at some point, even more tragically, her father lent her or gave her to one of his friends who had been abusing his own daughter and had gone to prison for that. Not for long, but he'd been convicted. The conviction happened after Virginia was assaulted by him. However, that lends additional credence for those who don't believe victims, that she was not just abused by her father, but also by this family friend. At some point, and it's not clear why, her father backed off of her, but she felt, of course, utterly betrayed because the family, her mother, she believed, knew, and other family members, and she was left to suffer on her own, doing things to numb herself from her pain, and ultimately ran away. And when she got home, when she was found or got home, they put her in a detention facility for so-called juvenile delinquents, a place that was later shut down because of the abuse, the sort of violence toward the kids there, these incredibly vulnerable kids. So she often ran away from the detention center. And that is where her life got so much worse before she again would move home before 16. So we're talking about somebody when she was a young child, like 7 years old, being raped by her own father and then trafficked to a neighbor friend, not her friend, her father's friend. And then the family kind of ignoring it. And then when she was, 12, 13, and 14, being, in that age era is what I recall, being in and out of this juvenile detention center. Her mother sent her there because she couldn't control her. Never wanted to know why she was running away or why she was taking drugs and drinking and things like that. And ultimately, she never knew a place of safety. So having that background helps you understand. And some of you may have had similar backgrounds. You don't need to be told that you need to understand this, right? But having that context helps us understand why she was so vulnerable to people like Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein. So I'm not going to talk too much about this book because we have other news to cover, but I'm going to spend a little more time out of respect for Virginia and for the other victims, which is to say, by the time, she's back home at 14 or back home around 15, and when her father at 16 brings her to Mar-a-Lago, in that period of time, right before that happens, at one point when she ran away from juvenile detention, I think this is a story that sticks with me so strongly from this reading, and I think will always, is they had to wear uniforms at this juvenile detention center. And I think it was something like khaki pants and a blue shirt. And so when she escaped one time, and I think they kind of knew she was escaping, and then they would figure out where she was and go pick her up. But at one time, she escaped and she had some money, and she ended up, I don't know if it was at a Marshall's or a Kmart or another discount store. And she goes in and she doesn't want to be wearing these clothes because people in town know that is the uniform of the kids at the detention center. So she goes in, finds a new outfit, jeans and a t-shirt, who knows what it was, puts that on, and then goes and hangs up on the rack the khakis and a blue shirt. So it looks like she just tried those things on and walks out of the store without paying. So there she is in a moment of what she probably perceived as some kind of freedom, and became a target of a really tragic situation. She's sitting, I think, she's outside or sitting on a bench. And she's at this point, I'm not exactly sure where or why she wanted to go somewhere, but there was some guy who pulled up in a truck, and he looked about her size and her age, and she thought she was safe. Did not have a very good radar for that, obviously. And he took her, he was supposed to drive her somewhere. I think she was essentially hitchhiking, but instead he took a detour. And I think you know what happens next. And it was a very violent assault, where she was left beaten, and she had, blood, in her, feeling of blood in her mouth and various places. And she felt just completely distraught. And so she was sitting, and she was able to escape, even though he had a gun, because he had a phone call that he had to take. And she decided he was going to kill her anyway. So she escapes. She ends up sitting on the curb of a road. And just feeling hopeless, obviously, when she ended up being trafficked to this guy who ended up going to prison. I think his name was, I'm not going to say what his name is, because I don't want to say this name wrong, but this guy had mostly been trafficking, girls who were 14 and 15 and 16 from abroad to various men in Florida. And she becomes part of this group. And she felt, I guess, safer there than in her juvenile detention on the street. But ultimately she gets out of there, and that is when she goes home. So can you imagine that, as a 16-year-old, already being through that, and coming to the conclusion that actually coming home to your parents' house would be almost safer than the previous situations. And that it was at that point, and she had a real love for horses. She had ridden horses, and this was something, and I'll get to that, that was so important to her and her family. And she thought maybe I'll get back into what, she thought she'd get back into what she wanted to do, which was animal training. Now, she's 16. She's not in school. Doesn't occur to anyone that she's going back to school. Obviously, I think in most states is 16, you can decide not to. But, middle school, high school dropout, trying to figure out how to make her way in the world, in a world that has never been kind to her and exploited her for her youth and physical attractiveness. At this point, and she also looked extremely young because she had an eating disorder, made her remain looking young, and was obviously part of her issues around control at that time. So she's home and she's hoping maybe she'll do things like veterinary medicine. But then she was thinking, when her father said, well, you can get this job at Mar-a-Lago. He was working as a mechanic, fixing some of the HVAC and some of the heating and other systems in the club. He brings his daughter in and says, there's this job for you working in the spa as an attendant there. And so that's at the point where she starts reading these books about, learning how to be a massage therapist, something that she at that point associated only with health and wellness. So this is the setup to a life from there. At age 16 for 2 years. It was only 2 years of her life that she spent in the clutches of Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeff Epstein. So I just want you to get that idea that she did escape by finding someone when she was traveling who she later married. Now, this is the basic framework of the story before I get into stuff that's new that might be relevant to you, which is incredibly vulnerable, sort of wise and unwise beyond her years, and very confusing context, a very confusing understanding of how to get by in the world. I mean, the way she tried to live essentially when she was basically in captivity was to try to ignore the ugly parts of what she had to do and what she was doing in order to try to enjoy the parts of her daily life that actually felt good. And it is tragic that we look at a young person like this, someone who was a child when she was abused and trafficked, and some people will blame them and say, and this is the tactic that Jeffrey Epstein used and his lawyers used, calling these young women prostitutes and drug addicts and such, making them, and by the way, let me just be clear, this is not to malign people in prostitution, sex workers, and so on. Instead, it's to make very clear that this demonization was deliberate, and it was intended to make people like Virginia be the predator as opposed to the victims. Now, Ghislaine Maxwell is someone in the book that Virginia calls an apex predator. Even the man who had trafficked her, who drove his limousine up to her when she had blood in her mouth and had just been brutally assaulted by that guy in the truck, that guy who brings her into this limousine, and he had another young girl there and gives her access to some of the trappings of safety compared to her home, but not really. She just said that these guys were just pedophiles. Ghislaine Maxwell was also an apex predator. And what she meant by that is she was operating her life on behalf of herself and Jeffrey Epstein to find, with other people, thousands of young girls to service Jeffrey Epstein's sexual and ego gratification needs and those of his friends. And again, this book made me even more resolute that Donald Trump must not pardon Ghislaine Maxwell, and that we must be prepared for such an eventuality or for a commutation of the sentence. because it strikes me that something he might do, say, oh, I didn't pardon her, I just commuted her sentence, right? This is what he did with George Santos. And I think we need to prepare for this. Now, I guess I would get to some of the things that maybe you didn't know, some things I didn't know, and some things that are actually new here. So she does not call out Donald Trump in this book. The biographer was recently interviewed saying she actually was a supporter of Donald Trump and mainly supported him because Virginia Roberts, once again, did not have the right radar. She believed, probably even till the day she died, to suicide, that Donald Trump was going to release the Epstein files. She wanted all of the men, many of whom she names in this book, to be held accountable. That was her mission. And that is why she brought the lawsuits, and you can, read about those in the book. I'll make one comment generally about some of those lawsuits, but that was her mission. And, unfortunately, she maybe recognized that same kind of person that time and time again abused her. And Donald Trump, although, she did not say when she was, she did not experience or write about, she did not claim that he had ever been inappropriate with her. Doesn't mean that he's a good guy, that she's writing about her own experience, and I believe her. Or maybe she thinks it's necessary, but I doubt it. I believe that that was her experience, and she wrongfully put trust in him that he would do the right thing. And he should, in her name, release these files. I hope more people read this book. And I guess my last two things about it to say is three things. One of the things about the structure of this book that make it difficult is it moves back and forth between Virginia as an adult at the time that she was working on this book with her, I wouldn't say ghostwriter, but with her editorial assistant. And so the structure that becomes the format is the time frame goes back and forth between Virginia sort of as an adult, having PTSD, and then also Virginia, and then back to these moments that triggered it, right? Or Virginia as a parent with her kids in Australia, or where sometimes she was in Florida with them, having those experiences and then flashing back to the past. And I have to say, I guess I understand, obviously, why she wanted to do that as a way to present herself as a person that was healing, that she was trying to say was whole. And so as not to be defined by this period of time in her life, specifically those 2 years about when she was essentially a sex slave to Ghislaine and Jeff Epstein and others that she was trafficked to. However, I found it disturbing. I could not move back and forth. So I ended up, in full disclosure, skipping the things she was writing about her current existence, because I did not like reading about her children right next to reading about her being abused as a child. It felt uncomfortable to me and disturbing to me. And, that's your choice. Maybe that's something important for you. I understand why she, as a writer, did that. However, okay, so that's one thing up at the structure. I think the second thing, and this is about things that hit me hard. On the thumbnail today, I had the arrow that was pointing to Jeff Epstein while he was standing there with Donald Trump and Ghislaine Maxwell and Melania, that picture. Jeff Epstein is one of his closest friends for 15 years. And I had the arrow pointing to Epstein with his face circled, and it says evil personified in quotes. And that is something that Melinda Gates, who used to be married to Bill Gates, had to say about Jeff Epstein. Now, it's repeated in this book. It's something that she had said previously, but it's something that I did not know that she had said. And so let me give you that context. And this is important because just like Howard Lutnick, the Commerce Secretary, who said the minute he was in Epstein's presence, he knew he was a creep and that anyone should have noticed it. What Melinda Gates said was that she met him, she found him disgusting, and she described him as evil personified, and she felt awful for these young girls in his clutches. And, keep in mind that at these dinner parties that ordinary people, that adults, often very wealthy or powerful or well-connected adults attended, often these young girls who looked to be 14 or 15 years old, and sometimes were just sitting around the table or wandering around. That at Jeff Epstein's home, there were pictures of naked young women on the walls and so on. The idea that you wouldn't get the direct message or pick up a vibe that this man was evil personified. And the reason why this comes up in the book is because Melinda Gates had said this around the time I think she got divorced from Bill Gates. And this was one of the reasons that was a tension in the relationship, that Bill Gates maintained this friendship with Jeffrey Epstein. Now, the last thing is, I've got on my phone, I want to tell you a couple things that I thought were especially relevant. Virginia talks about the secret non-prosecution agreement that Jeffrey Epstein had entered into. And what is disturbing about this is, if you remember, she gets out of the Epstein world around 2002, if I remember correctly. And it's years later that she gets a phone call from Ghislaine first and then Jeffrey, trying to make sure she's not going to say anything to about her experience with him. And then she comes to find out the reason why they're checking in with her is because the FBI is now investigating him after they were tipped off by the Palm Beach police. And what is so disturbing is the way in which she describes when the FBI called her to ask her questions. This is before the plea deal. It's like they don't even know her. It's some man on the telephone asking her whether she was, just explicit questions about sex with Epstein. And she just said, I don't want to talk to you. Because she, first of all, didn't know whether this might be Epstein or somebody else, trying to see if she was going to keep her end of the bargain. And he always made clear that there was a threat of violence or harm to someone in her family if she did not stay quiet. Okay, so what else comes up here, and this will be the final thing here, is again, many names of people, if you want to see them. There were no absolutely new names. I'm sorry, I'm going to talk about the cases one last thing. Absolutely no new names, but new information. I think the most shocking thing in this book is allegations that a prime minister, who we are led to believe by other parts of the book may have been Ehud Barak of Israel. And I don't know if he was a prime minister at the time. The timing isn't clear to me, but he had a role in the government at the time. There are allegations that, and again, it may have been him. It seems that's how she's implying, that there was allegations in this book that Jeffrey Epstein trafficked her to this prime minister. And when I use the word traffic, that can be everything from asking to, quote unquote, do what you did for Jeffrey, a sexualized massage or intercourse. But in the case of this prime minister, it was violent rape to the point where she was choked and blacked out and was bleeding. And I just want you to understand that even though Virginia spent 2 years of her life with them, she spent her entire life in captivity to that. And of course, to the abuse she suffered as a child. And we need to do much more for survivors of child sexual abuse. And we need to do much more to both punish perpetrators and, at the very least, expose them. So that is where I am with that. Thank you for taking a moment to show respect for Virginia and for all those who are the victims of sex trafficking, whether as children or adults. Okay. Now, my friends, Donald Trump has taken a wrecking ball to the East Wing of the White House. And I just want to blow this up a little bit. You can probably see in this photo, and I'm going to show you a video of what this looks like. Now, I've got a screenshot from Blue Sky from one of the journalists from the Washington Post named Jonathan Edwards. And here's what he writes in here. Scoop. Trump has started demolishing the White House East Wing facade to build his ballroom. The president had claimed construction of the $250 million building wouldn't interfere with the existing structure. Had claimed. Couple things here. Let me just put this back up. It is not his ballroom. It is not Donald Trump's ballroom. It's not his East Wing. It's not his White House. It is ours. Secondly, when you hear the word facade, to me, facade means, oh, you're pulling off vinyl siding. Oh, no, my friends. That is not what they mean by facade. Let me show you what is going on there. And then I want to share with you something I am grateful that I have on hand, which is actually photos with my daughter, Emily, when we were at the White House. We were so lucky to go there as part of one of the digital media invitations. It was in November of 2023. And you do enter for parties the White House through the so-called facade, through the covered area of the East Wing. So I want to show you what he knocked down. So first, let me show you this video, then I'll show you some of my photos. Give me a second. Just pulling this up. Demolition of White House, East Wing. And, okay. I almost had this. Let's just look at this video. Okie doke. Yeah, this is, I'm just gonna pull this up. Okay. And my friends, now I've got this. This is, it's something. It is something. Okay, video share screen. Here we go.
Demolition has begun on the East Wing of the White House to make way for the president's 90,000 square foot ballroom, which is expected to cost around $200 million. It's being paid for by the president and other private donors. The East Wing traditionally houses the First Lady's staff. The president says it will be fully modernized. With us now is Alyssa Farah Griffin, who was the White House communications director in the first Trump administration. We both keep looking at these pictures going like, wow, that just looks weird. Let me play you something the president said about this proposed ballroom earlier.
It won't interfere with the current building. It'll be near it, but not touching it, and pays total respect to the existing building, which I'm the biggest fan of. It's my favorite place. I love it.
So he said it won't interfere with the current building. He said that back in July here. It seems to be interfering with a big chunk of the building that got knocked down here. How surprised are you that he's doing this?
Well, listen, he advertised he was going to do this. And I do remember in the first term, he had this huge frustration with the fact that.
Let's look at this.
Room, maybe a little more than that. So he's always wanted this grand ballroom, something that you would see in England or.
Okay. A grand ballroom, something you would see in England. of course, but we have no kings. I want to show you what that actually looked like. So let me do this. I've got these photos from 2023 at the White House, of course, during the Biden administration. When we walked in, okay, so I just have to blow this picture up. Okay, I got it, guys. I got it. I think I do. I say that. Yes. Okay. Let me share this screen with you. I want you to see this. I'm glad I have these, and I guess I would say will never be the same. But what I also feel like, my friends, I think I just did this. Okay. There you can see these photos. Let me just put myself right here. No, I think I'll blow it up with that again. So this is the East Wing entrance. This is a so-called facade that you have been hearing about. And let me just add another photo here. I think I can do this if I keep, I better go back and show you. Here's Emily, and you can see through here the facade. So again, this will not be the same in the future, but I look forward to going to the new ballroom when he is no longer there, and having a party and dancing. I would look very much forward to that invitation. I hope I get one. So again, you can see this is the part that he has knocked down. Okay, here's another photo of us. You don't need to see all these photos, but I think you get the idea. And here's a nice other photo of this entrance. So guys, it's really, I'm not sure what to say about this. Let me just close, let me stop sharing. I'm not really sure what to say about this beyond Donald Trump lies all the time. And he is going to do whatever he wants to do. And this is something we know. And the only thing we can do in response is react to it. And I know that we're supposed to be proactive and not reactive, and that's a nice theory. And right now, though, we need to stave off and hold the line here. And I'm really grateful that the Democrats have not caved to Donald Trump in this shutdown. He is acting, though, as if it doesn't matter, doesn't care about the workers. And certainly doesn't care about farmers, right? We heard yesterday him on the show. I played him berating. This is on Monday. I showed you the Sunday night when he was berating on Air Force One. The reporter who dared to ask him, "What about the farmers? Why do you have $40 billion for Argentina?" And because he basically thinks he likes the president of Argentina more than he likes ordinary American farmers. Now, let me play you a little bit. I've got only two clips for you before we get to some crazy town today. Let's play Chip Roy, and this is upsetting to me because the fact that Mike Johnson nods his head when Chip Roy is essentially saying some of the most Islamophobic and anti-Semitic things you can say is disturbing. They definitely want a theocracy. So let us play this.
Not shutting down the government for political rallies. And the truth is, the Marxists, the radicals, and the Islamists, the Democratic Party promoted this weekend. They cannot handle the truth. The truth is that there is a king, and that king is Jesus. And the president has been willing to say it. His administration has been willing to say it. And Charlie Kirk was willing to say it, and he got killed for it.
Really? Really? We have a separation of church and state in this country. And the idea that he is using the No Kings rally to say our political leader, essentially, is Jesus Christ, that he is quote unquote the king, that is your religious belief, that is fine. We live under pluralism. There are many religions in this world and in the United States, and it's deeply offensive to create a kind of crusading idea here. Now, I have something else. Remember that Donald Trump's reaction to the protest was to share an AI video of him wearing a crown and flying a plane and doing what appears like dropping feces on crowds, including YouTuber Harry Sisson and others. Let's hear what Mike Johnson said in response to that when he was asked.
Johnson, you say that the Democrats had a Hate America rally, but what does it say that the President of the United States over the weekend released a video of him pooping on the American people?
The president uses social media to make a point. You can argue he's probably the most effective person who's ever used social media for that. He is using satire to make a point. He is not calling for the murder of his political opponents. And
okay, I'm gonna play the end of that in a second. He is using satire to make a point. First of all, that doesn't seem like satire to me, but you know, you do you, Mike Johnson. Doesn't seem like it fits the definition of satire. It's not particularly funny. Let me provide you a Merriam-Webster definition of satire. This is from Merriam-Webster. Satire, a noun, a literary work holding up human vices and follies to ridicule or scorn. It also means trenchant, wit, irony, or sarcasm used to expose and discredit vice or folly. So no, satire is what they do on Saturday Night Live with skits. This wasn't satire. This wasn't even funny. Okay, but Mike Johnson said he did it to make a point. What's the point? Because it seems like the point he's trying to make is contempt for protesters expressing their First Amendment rights and defecating on them. Is that the point he's trying to make? Does that befit the office of president? And then, well, we were just hearing at the tail end of that, which I'll now play. Is he saying he's not calling to kill his political enemies? Is that the bar we have now? Oh, Donald Trump, he's not a king. He's not a bad guy. He shows images defecating on people. He violates a law. He kills. He orders the murder of people in the Caribbean without any justification that is credible. That Donald Trump, you're saying the man who said he could shoot someone on Fifth Avenue and he wouldn't lose supporters, you're saying the bar is so low that we should be cool with him as long as he doesn't call for the murder of his political opponents? Well, guess what? He was perfectly fine with his supporters calling for the murder of Mike Pence as a way to threaten him, to try to get him to throw out the electoral votes in 2020. He was fine and even alluded to the murder of Hillary Clinton. So I don't think he even cleared that bar. Mike, let's play that.
murder of his political opponents. And that's what these people are doing. I mean, they're in one of these photos, I think there's a picture of the president hanging in effigy by a noose on one of these.
Oh, that's terrible that someone had the president hanging in effigy in a noose. What about Donald Trump, as I recall, and others? Thank you for joining, Karen Cooney. What do you say about all the people who had on the backs of their pickup trucks images of Joe Biden tied up? I mean, you can cherry pick out of 7 million people, 1 or 2 photos and try to of democracy if you want, but we're watching. And you cannot just clear away how psycho this man is. Now, let me play you one more clip and then I will have Crazy Town. Oh, actually, this is Crazy Town. This is Crazy Town. I'm going to talk to you on the other side. Let me just give you the music. Oops, that's not my Crazy Town music. That's my fun music that Jason wrote. And I love that. I was bopping to that. Okay, now let's bop to Crazy Town. I think it's a better bop, Jason's bop. Okay. This is Donald Trump not being able to keep his mind on task. I don't think this was one of his bobbing and weaving stream of consciousness. Well, actually, I think this is closer to a bobbing and weaving stream of consciousness than it is his deliberately changing the subject. But I think this is worse than his weave. I just think he is short-circuiting. Let's play this.
China, and I will have.
Let me get to the beginning. He gets a question from a reporter about China purchasing soybeans. Hold on. Actually, I'm sorry. This isn't this. Let me just play this one first. This isn't the Crazy Town, but it's pretty damn crazy. Here we go.
China and I will have a really fair and really great trade deal together. I want them to buy soybeans. They stopped buying our soybeans because they thought that was punishment. And it is punishment to our farmers, but we're not going to allow that to happen because I made a great trade deal with China, a $50 billion trade deal, and they were great about it. They were doing everything that they were supposed to do. And then when Biden came in, you know, I used to call President Xi all the time to say, thank you, or you're not buying enough. In other words, they were supposed to buy. Biden, do you think Biden ever called him? I don't think Biden ever called him. You think Biden lied awake at night thinking about trade with China?
No, I don't think Biden had to lie awake at night thinking about trade with China because Biden didn't create the tariff war and thus a situation where we needed to worry about trade with China. Now, let me get to the dementia Don situation. Okay. And it's always blame Biden, which is, you know, not going to work. Okay. Here we go. This is Donald Trump being asked a question that he just does not, his brain just short circuits. Let's go.
That the US enjoys with Australia, would you consider lifting the tariffs that you've imposed on Australia?
Okay, so this woman is from Australia, obviously, and I just want to say, in case she's speaking really fast, so she's asking about the tariffs on Australia, and he had the Australian Prime Minister in the room, so of course she is asking this about this. Okay, let's go.
That the US enjoys with Australia, would you consider lifting the tariffs that you've imposed on Australia? And can you give us any details about the critical?
Yeah, well, the tariffs have been amazing because, you know, tariffs have been really a reason that I was able to settle almost all of the, you know, I've settled 8 wars in 8 months. Not bad. I have one more to go. It's Russia, Ukraine, and I think we'll get there, but it's turned out to be nasty because you have 2 leaders that truly hate each other, you know? You can't have it all, right? They hate each other beyond all else, and it makes it actually a little bit difficult. But we try, of the 8 deals, I would say because of tariffs, 4 or 5 of them were settled.
What is he even talking about? First of all, he did not settle 8 wars. Secondly, the very fragile ceasefire between Israel and the Palestinians in Gaza is not going well. I mean, he just says this stuff and no one can challenge him. And it becomes part of his reality and the world reality that, I mean, most people don't believe him, but his supporters can just say this and he can actually believe that he settled 8 wars. He doesn't even know what is going on. And the idea that the question she asked deserved that answer, she said there's a trade surplus with Australia. Why don't you lift the tariffs? And his comment was, tariffs help me settle 8 wars. Also notice that his idea of geopolitical conflict is whether 2 men hate each other. Well, you know, it's all about animosity between Putin a ruthless dictator murderer whose political opponents are actually pushed out of windows and off balconies or poisoned, that guy, it's not that Zelensky hates him personally or that he hates Zelensky personally. This is about territorial ambition. This is about trying to keep land that you won in an unjust war. The aggressor is Russia. The country defending their land is Ukraine. This man can get none of that through his head. And with that, my friends, I bid you adieu. I will see you tomorrow, Wednesday morning. And thank you, as always, for participating in this community.
Hello, prison mates. It's the Jen Taub Show. Well, welcome everyone. Let's learn about what is happening in politics yesterday and today. There is hope, and we are together in this democracy we work for. And again, welcome to the Jen Taub Show.